All right, let's go deeper with this story now. We're joined by Brody, who's a war crimes prosecutor and former New York State Assistant Attorney General. Thank you very much for speaking to us on France 24.
You're
Based on,
welcome.
based on what we know so far, can we say this double tap strike constitutes a war crime?
Yeah, well, it would constitute a war crime if this were a war. Um, in fact, as we can get into, the laws of war don't actually apply here because the United States is not at war with drug dealers. President Trump has taken a metaphor, the war on drugs, and tried to convert it into an actual war. But in whether the wars, if the wars of law would apply, it would be a war crime. And even if they don't apply, it would be murder. So either way, what we are looking at here is a crime. Even in an armed conflict, um, uh, targeting shipwrecked individuals is categorically illegal. The United States Defense Department, in its manual, explicitly cites the shooting of of shipwrecked persons as an example of a clearly illegal order. And outside an armed conflict, the legal standard is even stricter. I mean, these survivors presented zero threat. Killing them would constitute a homicide under US federal law, and under international human rights law, it would be the arbitrary deprivation of life. And so, whether or not, I mean, there's a lot of dispute, as you've reported over the last day or two. Initially, it had been reported that Secretary of Defense, or Secretary of War, as he likes to call himself, Pete Hegseth, had ordered the second strike. Now they seem to be shifting blame to the military commander, Bradley. In either event, this, if it were an order from Hegseth, Bradley would have a duty to refuse the order because it is manifestly illegal. If it was Bradley, Hegseth would have the duty to prosecute him because because this was an illegal act.
So tell us more about how Pete Hegseth could be held personally to account over this. I mean, the White House did seem to shift responsibility slightly during that press conference, saying it was the U.S. Admiral who ordered the strike, but again, under Hegseth's command.
Well, that's right. I mean, under U.S. Military and international law, let's say that Hegseth ordered it. Um, there is no defense. Bradley would have no defense, say, of superior orders. I was just following orders. It was explicitly rejected at Nuremberg, and when the illegality is obvious, such as killing shipwreck survivors, one has a duty as a commander or as a soldier. And very interestingly, um, last week, several U.S. Congressmen, people, and senators who had served in the armed forces and in the intelligence community reminded members of the military that they can refuse illegal orders. And of course, that's true since Nuremberg. Trump called that video seditious and said that they should be punished by death. Now, if if Bradley was acting on his own to carry out the second strike, of course he's responsible. But then his superiors would be obliged, rather than to say, as Hegseth did, that Bradley was well within his rights. He would have the responsibility then to investigate Bradley for potential war crimes.
And CNN has made the comparison of this September strike with a similar one on also an alleged drug boat in October, which also left survivors, apparently. The outlet reports that in this case, the military actually didn't follow up with a follow-up strike like in September. Instead, it rescued the men and sent them back to their home countries. From a legal point of view, what does this tell you? Why wouldn't the administration detain them if these people were so-called narco-terrorists as claimed?
Well, of course, that's exactly what should be done. The U.S. has the power and the authority to make drug smuggling a crime. We have the power and the authority to interdict boats that are bringing drugs into this country. We have the power and the authority to try people. If they're convicted by a jury, they can be sentenced to prison. What we don't have any legal authority to do, and I think this is the bigger question here, this entire operation rests on the idea that the United States can just execute people from the skies without any trial, without any evidence, without any showing that they pose some sort of imminent danger to anybody. Former Philippine President Duterte is before the International Criminal Court on trial for doing exactly the same thing, murdering alleged drug traffickers. And of course, we are not at war. And even if we were in war, people on these boats are civilians. They are not attacking us. Under international rules, you cannot target civilians unless they are actually engaged in hostilities against you, unless they're actually shooting at you. And that's not what's going on here. These are sitting ducks, and we are simply engaged in cold-blooded murder of individuals who may or may not be drug smugglers.
So then in
I
this
think,
case, what could happen next? I mean, is there any legal recourse against these attacks?
well, I mean, if we had a justice system in the United States that was independent, or I mean, we do have courts that are independent, but of course the prosecutor, Donald Trump has been treating the Department of Justice and the federal prosecutors as like his private attorneys, and so I don't expect that there will be any court martials, that there will be any investigations. And I think I also want to make a larger point here, which you set up in your piece about Venezuela. All of this has nothing to do with combating illegal drugs. Venezuela accounts for only a small fraction of the flow of drugs coming into the United States. This morning, Trump pardoned the former Honduran president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was convicted by a U.S. court of bringing in 500 tons of cocaine. He was serving a 45-year sentence for running a cocaine network. He once bragged about sending coke up the nose of gringos. At the same time, we're pardoning somebody who's been convicted of bringing, hundreds of tons of cocaine to the United States, and we're killing people who are hanging on to boats. I mean, this whole situation is about bullying and threatening the regime of Nicolás Maduro, not about drugs.
All right, Reed Brody, a war crimes prosecutor and former New York State Attorney General Assistant. Thank you very much for speaking to us on France 24.